Welcome to the Trauma Survivorhood podcast. I'm your host, Sarah, an IFS-informed trauma recovery coach. This show features interviews from guests all around the world as they share their impactful stories and deliver hope and inspiration through their personal post-traumatic growth. We explore and discuss resources and coping strategies to support the survivor community to thrive in their own healing journeys. Enjoy. Welcome back to season 2 of the Trauma Survivorhood podcast. I have with me today my friend Eri Blue, and Eri is PhD. She is Japan's first certified trauma recovery coach. She is IFS informed. She actually, before she got into the field of trauma recovery, she used to work as a regulatory specialist at chemical companies after obtaining a PhD in biochemistry at the University of Milan. She then shifted her career from academia to the corporate world, and now she works as Japan's first CTRC. She's a sole proprietor of her own business. Her passion and motivation are that she doesn't want anyone to go through the painful path that she went through alone. She has struggled with imposter syndrome, burnout, CPTSD, and adaptation to life in Japan. And so she's here making a difference now as a coach. And also, she is now a best selling author of a beautiful new book called How to Discover and Reconnect with Your Authentic Self, Trauma Survivors to Thrivers. Eri, thank you so much for being here today. We are so glad to have you on the show. So I'll jump right into it. So one of the biggest things that you talk about on your site and I'm sure in the book and in your bio, you talk about burnout quite a bit.
Yep.
And I know that's really, really common for trauma
Mhm.
survivors because your brain is trying to do so many things just to survive. And then you also have to be in the real world and make money and
Mhm.
go to work. So, and you're obviously very high achieving. So tell us a little bit about that burnout for you now. How do you combat it? How do you sense it coming on? What do you do?
Mm. First of all, thank you for the beautiful introduction. And for me, that when I design my work, I had the situation that I have to choose a life or the job. And I concluded myself that if I leave, I could choose a different path. And here I am. I'm first certified trauma recovery coach, and so that is a beginning point. And I would say that for the burnout, I kind of feel like as a trauma survivor, we are not so we have a tendency of overdo and aiming perfection, but sometimes that the aiming perfection part is like as a human you cannot achieve, but you aim it because you see other people doing it. So when I having I still have a tendency of it, but when it happened, I could notice more easily compared to before because now I have more awareness of how my body is feeling and how my body is overwhelmed or like coping with the situation. And in the past, I couldn't take care of myself the time that my body say, I cannot do it anymore. I tended to take it like, oh, okay, I have to do it more. And I also wrote about it on this book that when we learn that in the environment of like you have to be perfect, you have to do more, otherwise you are not approved or you are not loved. So like we push harder more than we can, and then that we ignore our body signal. So that is something I changed the time during this pandemic. I learned a lot about trauma, and I learned that how importance of listening and noticing about your condition body wise, and uh, listen it, not like that you suppress or you mm, suppress or like you just ignore, because when as I learn IFS, when we ignore more, the part will get louder. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That's great. That's beautiful. So I'm hearing awareness, number one, being aware that it's even happening, and then really tuning in to the somatics of it and following your body and listening to that lead. That's, yeah, great, great advice. Yeah. So you are Japan's first certified trauma recovery coach. Tell us a little bit about the Asian culture and trauma. And I know that's very different from some of the Western world. So I'd love to hear your perspective.
Yeah. In the past, I learned with other certified trauma recovery coach who are having Asian background that I learned that how the Asian society are pressuring us, and in general in the house, the parents put the pressure on the kids like that. How kids are doing well is their value. Like they equaling about that. There have no boundary between the kids and the parents, and so like the usually the kids are so much pressure under the pressure of like have to achieve more, and like the 100 score 100 is the standard, not like that the aim, but that is the standard kind of environment. And also like that among Asian, I heard that Japan is particularly hard and particularly aiming the perfectionism and a little bit extreme side. So even with because when we run the Facebook group, we are mixing about like some people are from Singapore, some people from that China, and some people from that living in a Western country but having a Asian family background. So like there's so much mix, and some people told me like Japan, but Japan is extreme, so that's a different story.
Wow.
Yeah.
So,
In,
how do Asian families work with trauma? Do they acknowledge the trauma? How do you get that support that you need?
oh my goodness, that is other big thing that we should not talk, we should not discuss, we pretend not exist, and the family secret stay in the family and not outside. And so like in I was I grow up in the family that when I say I need to want to see the therapist, psychotherapist, even though my father is a medical doctor, he say like if you if you see the psychotherapist or psychiatrist, you cannot find a job because you have some um like it's sort of saying that you're mentally not well. But I know that in Western culture it's different because people consider like if people who go to the psychotherapist, it's more like they have that luxury to afford that kind of service and taking care of their self. So it's totally different mentality, and still some people who even struggle a lot with the trauma um, still fight it with the stigma and cannot really go and access to that needed support. And above all, in Japan, that I really discovered that the knowledge of the trauma and the biology of trauma is like really not updated. So some even the psychotherapist saying that, oh, that is like your will is not enough, you have to put more effort on it, or like why are you repeating the same story again, again, again. So that is that situation, what is happening in Japan. And with the ignorant of that trauma and not having sufficient trauma informed knowledge, that more the client or the patient are suffering, because they tend to feel I'm the bad, I'm the weirdo, I'm a crazy person, and I have no hope. And more you ask help, you get more harmed by others. And in fact, I was in the past in the past time when I was when I was little, I was told by the school counselor that you'll be the next psycho killer or something. And I was just asking for the help and support, and they concluded in that way, and I wasn't given the support at all. So that is something like that. Maybe I'm a little bit biased because I also experienced not good in the Japanese psychotherapy field. But yeah, I really feel that since that cognitive behavior therapy is that the most advanced therapy in for trauma in Japan at this moment, and that is so wrong, consider that how brain are not able to function cognitively when the amygdala are having the alert. So I feel like, oh my goodness. Yeah.
Yeah. It makes me so sad when you said, the more that you ask for help, the more potential you have to be further harmed, which is just,
Yeah.
the re-traumatization that happens then in the medical. So I'm really sorry that happened to you, and for someone who was asking for help and it just wasn't there. So brave of you and wonderful that you got in to being not just trauma informed, but a trauma trained mental health professional as a coach, and really just being brave enough to do that so that you can continue your healing, but also bring healing to other people. So I really appreciate you for that. It sounds like it's so needed in your country. So I'm really glad for that. So I do love on your website when you talk about the difference between coaching and therapy, right? So I want to steal it from you, actually, from your website. What I appreciate is that you base it on an explanation of like where the person is and where they're trying to go, which looks different in therapy versus coaching. So can you tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about that?
Yeah. I really feel that when we focusing like for the because I have experience of 7 years of taking a traditional psychotherapy in Japan. And also I took in Italy while I was doing my PhD. And so I have a plenty of experience of how psychotherapy works. And I found that it tended to be talking about the past and how to untangle with the difficulty I had and so on. And but I really felt like more you talk about past, more you stuck with it, and more you emphasize your memory, and because the neuron fire together, wire together. So like I really felt that is like if we are aiming for the recovery and if we are aiming for the healing, it might be not appropriate. And for the coaching side, since I'm also using IFS in my session, I try to listen that current problem they have, and then asking also where they want to go,
Yeah.
and also like when the parts want to talk about the past, we could talk about it,
Right.
but not in that the person talking about past, but the part is uh, letting us know why they're doing what they're doing.
Right.
So it's I found it's more because when we have the focus in one direction, we are easy to go that direction. So for that reason, I found that psychotherapy and the coaching are different, because the coaching are in the present to the future, but the psychotherapy is more on the present to the past,
Yeah.
or the past. And for the healing trauma, you cannot just directly go to that the past because that can cause a more issue. So like that, I consider that the coaching side could help people to more stabilize and able to have the capacity to go into the past, maybe with a psychotherapist. But as a coach, we are not aiming to do that part because it might need more training to do it for sure. So for that reason, I think it's not something I would like to say this is good, this is bad. It's more about the stages that people could take it. Or like in America, that there are a lot of shortage of the great psychotherapists, or like having a so much waiting list. And meantime, how people can do, they're just out with like bleeding. So I think that it's something the trauma recovery coach could help to them to stabilize, and they to learn, let them get familiar with how to be in the present even though they're having a trauma. Because at the end, sometimes that like CPTSD, that some people cannot get over, or that cannot get rid of trauma, have to leave it, have to learn how to live with it, but not get triggered by it.
Right.
So yeah, I found that is a big difference.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's really beautifully said. That's why I love that piece from there, because there's definitely more of processing with therapy, which is not where our training lies, right? And the training lies really in moving forward with your trauma, right? So I love that. I think there's so much value there. So I want to dive into this book. I'm so excited. So your book is called How to Discover and Reconnect with Your Authentic Self: Trauma Survivors to Thrivers. And this is a compassionate shift from being a survivor moving into your authentic self. So your workup on the book says you'll learn how to take care of yourself. You can unpack your thinking patterns and old perspectives. You'll learn how to celebrate all of your wins. You'll learn how to compliment yourself, updating your focus. You'll be able to notice your conditions and reconnect with your authentic self and connect with your resiliency. So this is a book that right now, you currently have it in Japanese, and it's
Yeah,
been released. Yes, it's so beautiful. I love the cover. It's so
thank you.
there's like such an artistic bend to it. I love it. So tell us a little bit about the book. Where did the inspiration from it come? Is it coming
Mm.
in other languages? Fill us in.
Yeah, thank you. So um, I really wanted to write a book because I know that my life experiences, because I have like adverse childhood experiences as a score 7, which is quite high. And I also was in the kids shelter in the past, and I also dropped out from high school but achieved the PhD at the end. So I had a lot of share from my experiences, but not only that, because I after joining the International Association of Trauma Recovery Coaching, I had so much insight of trauma and the trauma recovery, and also like uh, uh, by belonging the association, I was able to access to that which the psychotherapists get the continuing education unit, like a PACE or
Yes.
psychotherapy networker, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So I really thought that it's not okay that I just keep it those information and those experience within me, and I better write it down somewhere and people could reach. And also that part of me, I really felt like I wanted to save myself, that which I couldn't have the help and knowledge the time I was really suffering. So beginning of the book, I also wrote about that 5 point that which I struggle, and how it was passed and how I changed by knowing the content of that what I wrote on this book. And I really wanted to put in this book like the because when we are in the trauma response, like we feel like hopeless and we feel like this is never gonna end. And so I really wanted to share that the light of hope, which I really felt and learned from that Dr. Frank Anderson, that
Yeah.
he's that IFS senior trainer and also that psychotherapist and psychiatrist. And he shares so bravely his personal story, and that make us really understood what is IFS and how we can heal ourselves. And so I truly want to I don't know, mimic, or like I want to be the Japanese version of him.
Oh. I want to be the American version. I want to be the girl version of him. I think Aaron and I share that fascination with. I think is he probably your favorite IFS trainer, Dr. Anderson? Yeah, mine as
Yes.
well. I love the way that he speaks and that he trains on. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, wow. What a
Actually, that
compliment.
thank you. Actually, that I'm sorry that when I started IFS, I started to get excited.
Me too. Yes,
My
I know. Why are we
yeah,
talking about anything else? Let's just talk about IFS.
yes. By the way, the IFS is internal family system that
Yes.
the person who are not familiar with,
Yes.
and the Richard Schwartz is the founded this beautiful psychotherapy method.
Yes.
And now like they also published the scientific paper about how it can be affected for PTSD and
Yes.
others. So it's
Yes.
really now hard to get into the training, but
Very much.
it's
Yes.
really effective. And for me that without knowing and without talking and without taking that Dr. Frank Anderson's talk or the session, that I feel like I never could really understood the level of I understood right now of the IFS and how it helping me daily life. That, for example, that even when I feel like a suicidal ideation, at this moment I still do sometimes.
Yeah.
I know how I can stay with the part, try to help me by bringing the idea and try to um, create a gateway from the painful feeling and so on. So, and when we stay with that part, usually that the part felt like, yeah, I'm not alone. I have a support and I don't need to do what I do used to do. So it's really easily to help me to calm down and calm that part. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I love
sorry
that.
to
No,
different
that's okay.
different
So no, it's
story.
totally fine. In your book, because you're talking about IFS in your book, and I will link up in the show notes. I did a basic introduction podcast episode called IFS just to kind of explain to people what that modality is. So I'll actually link
Mhm.
that in the show notes
Oh,
if
thank
people just
you.
want like a little bit of an intro to it. But in the book, because you're talking about IFS and you're kind of explaining this, is this like kind of helping introduce Japanese people to IFS in
Mm.
that way?
I hope so, but you know that in Japan still that official training is not available.
Mm.
The association, the IFS association is org is considering to have the training in Japan next year. So just starting considering. So I don't think
Wow.
when we will have it eventually. And so I think it's some people are because there have two Japanese book which written about IFS available and translated. So for that reason, that some people who are really having a curiosity to try something new, they might know it. But I'm quite sure that some people are so suspected, like, is this really working? Or like, I cannot, because we are so disconnected from the body and internal sensation. It's so hard to get in.
Yeah.
And I know that it will take time to people to understand how this is powerful and how this is helpful. But at this moment, I would say that not enough IFS practitioner or the therapist available in Japanese, and I think that is a stopping point. And also for me, on the book, I also wrote about the IFS, but I aim to not to wrote on super detail, because some also that Dr. Frank Anderson say that sometimes we educate too much, then the people start thinking about the is this a firefighter? Is this a manager? And it's start thinking and not feeling. So
Right, right.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why the exploration sessions, or even the guided IFS meditations are really powerful, because then you're actually just experiencing it,
Mm-mm.
which is beautiful. Well, it sounds like you having this in your book, if there's only two other Japanese translated books about IFS, and the IFS Institute is just now considering getting it out to Japan, I'll call Dick Schwartz. I'll get it out there for you, girl. Don't worry. Um, but I think this is a great stepping stone for you to be really kind of ushering in this brand new world for the Japanese people. So this book sounds like it's going to be very popular. Is it going to be translated? Is it going to be in other languages, Italian, Spanish, English? Are you working on that?
I would like to work on in English, because like I have so many friends that who are asking that, but why not English yet? Like I want to have an English version. So
Oh,
I like a next year goal for me is to make the English version, and
yes.
for the rest, I don't know.
You'll
And
see. You'll find that out, I guess. That's amazing. What I'll do is I'll link up. The Japanese version is on Amazon, and we'll have that linked in the show notes for those
mhm.
who speak Japanese, and then they can also, just be watching the Amazon store, so that when the English version does drop, it'll be available
Yeah,
to them.
yeah.
So
And also that I have like a 42 or 43 of the references on this
okay,
book, and most are in English. So
got it.
maybe like if you are the member of like Amazon Unlimited, and
Yes.
you can download it for free, and
Yes.
just seeing that references
Yeah.
could help you to start like learning something
Excellent.
good.
Is that
Yeah.
in the back? Is it like a reference section so they
Yeah,
can get
yeah, yeah,
referrals
yeah.
to
The last,
places?
yeah, last part. Yeah, yeah.
Excellent, excellent. Great resources there. Yeah, beautiful. Because more than 40 resources is a lot to have in a book. So that's beautiful. Yeah. So if you're Amazon Unlimited, you can click on that link that's going to be down there in the show notes, and then you can download the book totally for free, with your unlimited pass, and then you can find the back section there and get those English resources. That's great. Oh, Eri,
Mhm.
we're so glad to have you on today. So with all of our guests, obviously you've come so far. You've come wide, you've come deep, you've come all the way across the pond over here to America. You're doing really, really well, and we love to ask all of our guests, what were some of the most helpful, other than Frank Anderson, because we've already talked about him. You geek out about Dr. Anderson some more. We love IFS. Other than IFS, what would you say, just a couple of resources, internal or external, that were just really catalysts in your healing?
Mm. For me, I would say noticing that your internal feeling and like somatic experiences as well, and also like the I usually take do that uh TFT, but I think in America it's more popular in EFT,
Yes.
emotional freedom technique, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly, that's
Yep, the
abbreviation.
tapping. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, the tapping. And also like I took several hypnotherapy
Mm,
to override that my belief. And I'd say above all the self-care. And I think that without self-care, no matter how you spend the money, you never can make it. And something that people think the self-care is something luxury or something expensive, But for example, that in the morning, open the curtain and see the sunlight. That is one of the self-care you could consider, because if you take the sunlight in the morning, you're set up for the good sleep in the night.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's something like you don't need to do it. You don't need to put the effort, but like you already doing it, saying like you sleep,
Yeah.
that's it's counted as a self-care, could help you that, oh, I'm taking care of myself a lot. That's great. And
Yeah.
that's help you to feel that I'm a valuable, or I'm a lovable. And I think that is something, the message we should constantly send to us, not like once a week or the once a month. It's something like have to have in a day several time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I think that is the most important thing.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, having yourself at that priority, right? And not that self-care can't look like a bubble bath or a massage, but it doesn't have to look like those things. It's just, putting your health first, putting your well-being first. Boundaries is self-care,
Mhm,
standing up
mhm,
for yourself if your boss is being disrespectful. All of those things are caring for yourself. It's yeah, a luxury, bubble bath is great also, but you can't do that every hour, every single day. But yeah, every moment you can find a little way to just let yourself know that you're focusing on it and you're thinking about
mhm.
it. So that's really beautiful. Oh, we thank you so much for joining us. Tell people before we jump off, where can they find you? How can they reach out to you if they have questions?
Mm. So I have the website, and the link will be shared on that
On the
in
show
below.
notes. Yeah.
And that place that have like the inquiry section,
Yes.
and
Hmm.
then people can read there. But also like Instagram.
Yes.
If you use Instagram, you can find me and DM me if it's needed. And yeah,
Awesome. And I know you have a LinkedIn and a few other things that you've sent me to
yeah.
for links.
Thank you.
So all of those will be at the bottom for the show notes. So thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything that I didn't ask that I should? Anything else that you'd like to share with us before we go?
Mm. I'd like to say, like, we all have resilience,
Mm.
and we all have a self, that IFS self, and we all have the hope of light, the light of hope inside of us. So I know that sometimes we aim for the big achievement, but if you make a one day, that is your burning the light of hope
Mm.
inside of you. And I just want everyone to remind about that, how much you are already doing great.
Mm.
Yeah,
That's
even though if
beautiful.
you're not feeling good,
Mm.
and it's not permanent.
Yeah. Even if you're not feeling good right this minute, you're still doing really great. That's awesome. I love that. Eri Blue, thank you so very much for being with us today. We really appreciate it. Have a great rest of your day. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you for listening or watching this episode of Trauma Survivorhood. For more info, show notes, and links, check out the episode guide below. Until next time, be well, survivors.